FloodGate family. Thanks so much for joining us for another edition of our Leadership Live. And today we are happy to have Joe Steele. He's head of commercial at HemoSonics. Joe, thank you so much for coming on.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Joe, I know you know a lot about you, but I'm sure there's a lot of people on this call that do not, so give us a little bit of rundown. Tell us about yourself and a little bit about HemoSonics, of course.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I spent most of my career in MedTech. I've been really just blessed to have really almost started my career. I had a bit of a false start in finance. I came out of Fordham University in Manhattan. I had a finance degree. I thought I wanted to work on Wall Street. A lot of people in my generation, watched the movie, and I thought I was going to be, a very good Bud Fox. But unbelievably transactional and just not what I wanted to do. And I got really lucky. I got a great recruiting firm was looking to fill out spots for a new women's health organization at J&J, Ethicon, Gynecare back in the day, late 90s. I interviewed two really strong regional sales managers that were building out. And I got brought in, and one thing led to another. We had amazing products. We had amazing innovation, certainly the support of J&J and some great funding and amazing people. And, I just really got to be a part of like this storytell, as my first real job in MedTech. And that was 98. And I was there for almost 14 years. Spent some time in other strategics, doing great things with really good people. And I've always been attached to good products. Yeah. I've always been attached to good products, Smith & Nephew, and then Guidant back in the day before the acquisition, some CRM, and then over to Medtronic. And I had, I've been in startups for a while now and early commercial organizations. And I had a great mentor at my first startup and just taught me so much about capital sales and how that process really works, and forever thankful. And then, that brings me to HemoSonics. I'm head of commercial. We have an amazing technology. We operate in the acute care space. So if you're in cardiovascular surgery and you're a top surgeon doing everything absolutely right, and you have a patient that is bleeding and you want to better understand that, our technology is what we call point of need in the cardiac unit in the OR. And we can help differentiate whether that is coagulopathic bleeding or, hey, there's a hole that has to be sewn up somewhere. And we give them a huge piece of the puzzle to do that in real time in the OR. And this is, it's early commercial. It's amazing. Great people, great leadership. And we've had some tremendous success, 100% year over year growth the last 2 years coming out of COVID. And we're looking to double again this year with some good people.
Hey, I would 100% sounds like a good number to me, but so congrats on that. But we brought you here really to ask you some questions on leadership, right? Sure. You've had great leadership training, J&J. You don't get better than that. Moving on up, Guy had many different roles. So guys, I'm going to ask some questions, but if you're listening to this, just comment below, because those comments, we're going to pull them in. We're going to ask Joe. So if you're commenting, please ask. We'll pull some of those in. So as we're going through this. But the first question I have for you, Joe, is what do you think are the attributes to be a good leader in this unique space of med device?
Wow. I mean, I don't think anything trumps authenticity, right? I mean, authenticity, transparency, and just a general passion for what you're doing is infectious, right? I mean, people want to be a part of that. I think the best leaders that I've been around and I've been associated with, I've reported to, they have an uncanny ability to tell a story, weave a narrative, and then define that narrative for their team, and then enroll people within that vision that they have. And I think the best just do that. Certainly, I was very fortunate to be around folks who did that for me in all of those strategics, and especially my first startup and early commercial experience. And I think, lastly, I think great leaders have an ability and an absolute need to surround themselves with other great people. I think they have an uncanny ability to attract great talent. As one mentor said, it's like, Joe, your life becomes a lot better when you have top operators surrounding you. The job becomes that much easier. The unmanageable becomes manageable. The impossible becomes possible when you have really strong, talented operators around you and feeding you and helping you.
Right. Well, and to be able to access those strong people and empower them, you need those first things, right? With this authenticity and humility, knowing that, I think as Reagan said, if I'm the smartest person in the room, I know the first problem, right? So,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so those are some of the great things you learned, what leaders need to do. But hey, I'm sure there's been some lessons learned, right? Mistakes you've made along the way. Hey, can you share a couple of, or one or two of those that others could learn from?
Well, Joe, I think if you talk to my parents, they would tell you like every lesson I ever learned was the hard way, right? I was the kid. I'm like, is that hot? Yeah, let me check that out.
Yeah.
So that was me as a child and pretty much into my, through college. I don't want to get too philosophical, but I'll just say, from personal experience, passion can really overwhelm you when you find something that you believe in so much and it is so good and so right. And one of my first roles was kind of like that in women's healthcare, and the unmet need, the technology we had, the way we answered that need. Without getting too philosophical, I just want to say, you can't let your passion consume you. And I think that, we, never confuse, being so passionate. The things we really should be passionate about in life are, family, friends, life,
Right.
so we have to strike that balance. And I think I had to struggle with that, early in my career, probably my upbringing, probably my heritage, but certainly I was so passionate about what we were doing. And I believed in it so much that, I think that might've hurt people around me at the time. And, so more of a practical lesson learned would be from the abstract would be more practically. I was probably not as good as I could have been with people who didn't grasp that passion immediately, right? Like, no, this is a great company, Joe. I hear what you're saying. I'm like, no, man, we're going to change the world. And like, why don't you see that? You're like, yeah, but I feel like those are things as leaders, we have to remember, right? That, this is, that we live to work. We don't work to live. We have this privilege of being in MedTech, so we have this ability to do well while we're doing good. And the fact that we are touching patients, gives us almost this, moral responsibility to be incredible at our jobs, because the better we are at our jobs, the more patients that are helped, the more partnerships we make with great clinicians and healthcare, people. And so, yeah, I guess I looked at it that way. And, that probably damaged some of my early working relationships where it was like, if you're not, with me, you're against me, because look at what we're doing. So, I mean, my advice would just be, to watch the balance of that and to ensure at all times that we're keeping that real good work-life balance.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. And what I kind of heard you say is have that passion, but qualify with a little bit of patience, right? Especially for those that might not be where you are, right? And then the second thing, which is also kind of part of that, is make sure you maintain that balance. For me, it's kind of that 5 F's, are you keeping that balance? Because you got a long career ahead of you, and having that right balance allows you to really execute over the long term. So
yeah, it's a marathon, and running a marathon at sprint speed, you got to remember it's not just you that's involved. You have a partner, you have a spouse, you have children, you have family. So everything you're doing, engages them as well. So just keep it balanced.
I love that. I love it. Now, I know part of the key thing, especially in startups, is the high performance. And you mentioned earlier, it gets easier, if you surround yourself with great performers. And, so how do you develop those? What are the key ways that you develop those high performers in your organization?
Well, I mean, I was really fortunate to learn from some of the amazing companies, the J&Js, the Medtronics, and they have this unbelievably structured development program, and they've really understood the need to see, talent as an asset. It's a human asset, and to cherish it and value it and to develop it. In the early commercial space, without as much structure, I think we have to keep it really simple. So, I think first and foremost, I want my high performers and high potential people. I really want them to see us as like business partners. Like they're a partner in our success. They're not just an individual contributor. They are a partner in our success. And, I think from there, I try to open up as much of the business as is appropriate, in private companies, to open up the business to them so that they can see as much of it. And I want to find and help them focus on what their real strengths are, and what can differentiate them from the rest of the crowd. And they have to look in the mirror with a really sharp eye to say, hey man, I really might want to be this, but if I'm unbelievably analytical and I can crunch this and I can do this, you may be better suited long-term for that. So I'm taking that kind of, inventory, so to speak, and understanding your needs, and where your strengths are is super helpful. And we try to guide them along that process. And I think, I think finally, challenge. Like, you just have to challenge your top performers, right? You have to give them the tools and the resources, but you have to challenge them to think about the needs of the business as a business owner, and to step up, step forward, lean in, and help solve, especially in early commercial businesses, or even in large strategics, to rethink how they do certain things. And some strategics have really great ways of commercially doing that. But with a small startup or an early commercial organization, we're much more reliant on kind of that organic approach to having our high performers tested through, kind of challenged by fire. It's like, hey, listen, if you think the comp plan could be better, man, I'd love to see how you would develop it. I want you to consider these things, look at the market, show me how you're going to give me an idea of how you're going to work on it, and then let them go and give them guardrails and tools, but little direction, and see where they get with it. And it's amazing sometimes what they come up with.
Yeah, no, my former leader is, you gauge the great people want great challenges, right? They truly do. So the more you can challenge them with the right guidance, guardrails, etc., and put it in places where you need to win, which I heard you say is make sure you know their strengths, and analysis, and then challenge them in the areas where they have the skills to be able to be successful. I love that.
100%. 100%.
Now, one of the things that obviously developing those high performers is one thing, but finding them, right? This is near and dear to my heart, is what have you found the best way to find and, and evaluate who are those future high performers to bring on the team?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So I think first and foremost, never stop looking. We should always be looking for talent at every level of the organization. We should always be, I think for us, we just really try to be open, and our aperture around what does great talent look like. The market is incredibly tight for the top performers right now, and those that can actually, materially move your business on a mitigated timeline. Those people are in unbelievable high demand. So what we've really tried to do is, yes, you have to have a trusted and aligned talent partner like you, like Heidi, the people I've been fortunate enough to work with. And I've worked with some great recruiting firms over the course of my career. And yes, you have to have that, that's a given, and they have to be aligned and trusted, and then you have to know they have to be able to think like you do and solve your problems the way you need to solve, and find those people. Yeah, that's it. But also, we really want to open that aperture to look for non-industry vets that have, creative problem solving skills. I mean, the number one thing we ask people to do today in this complex market is solve complex problems, multi-level stakeholders, different parts of the institution, different needs, different wants, different reporting structures and hierarchies, consensus decision making. That's highly complex. It just is. So there is a bar of just mental agility that is required today. That bar used to just be go out and work 80 hours a week and give me your all. And it just used to be that way.
Great relationships, and you're good. That is not the case.
And I'll always have a soft spot for those folks that I just believe will outwork everyone else. And we always give them a little preference just because they're just good people. But at the end of the day, that mental agility, that intellectual curiosity, there's just a bar there now in our industry that says, hey, you got to have this, and you should be working on that every single day to understand And that I think the growth mindset and the grit and perseverance is now required. Like that's the bar, right? I mean, so I think having a good HR partner internally, and then also having a good talent acquisition partner is key. Never ever stop and looking. I'm on LinkedIn all the time, and I'll just connect with people because I'll see what they do. I've connected with people who have pitched me products. You know, I had someone that pitched me. She's this amazingly talented girl that pitched me on video for prospecting. And man, she was so articulate, so focused, so developed, so young in tenure in her career. I just wanted to connect with her. I'm like, this is a person that at some point in my life I would love to work with. And you have to find those people out there. So it's a very active process as well.
Right. Yeah, no, that's I love it. I mean, really seeing people who they are, having a good partner that understands what your needs are, you know, really kind of helps perpetuate that. Hey guys, I'm here. So if you joined us kind of halfway through, I'm here talking to Joe Steele. So talking about leadership, we're going to ask some questions, but if you've got comments, post them below because we're going to be hitting those and getting some questions that come up. So post your questions below and we'll ask those. Now, I know there's a lot of people that are probably listening to this right now that are aspiring leaders. You know, they're in that first level role. They want to be where you are. What do you think they should do?
You know, I think there's a good place to start with this, right? And when you make that conscious decision, like you're going to take a step forward, like one, understand that as you take that step into leadership, like the lens of criticism and the lens of focus becomes sharper, right? When you move beyond individual contributor into the hopeful leader of others, that the demands will be more, and just be attuned and be understanding of that. When we do our performance reviews, you know, I'll start looking at people going like, yeah, that was an amazing performance as an individual contributor. But if you want to be a leader, then I may start to look at that with a different lens. And it's not harsh. It's just more critical of the aspects that we'll be asking of those folks as they move. So I think that's a key part of it, is that mindset change. I think it's incredibly important to be seen as a leader on your own team, whether in your region or your division, right? To be seen as a leader, someone that is the go-to person clinically, or in an aspect of the selling process, or an ability, and brand yourself that way. That's how I started. It was just basically being seen as a clinical leader on one small team in one small region, branching out into regional, becoming a sales trainer in that area, passing on those skill sets to others, being recognized because now I was in a bigger kind of a fishbowl, taking on every single assignment they would give me. I would take on. I would take it as a challenge, and I was fortunate enough to have those. So, you know, it is also key that you're in an institute, you're in an organization that has challenges that they want to farm out to have people solve, and that's a key part of it as well. But I mean, you have to volunteer for everything. And another thing is, be mindful of the relationship you have with your manager, right? With your supervisor. I mean, like they're your biggest partner. The biggest break I got in my career, and I would say break, but it really wasn't break. It was very meaningful and very deliberate. Is I had, while at Medtronic and working under a VP mentor, I won't say his name, but he's just an amazing person. You know, he positioned me for my next role. He led through the succession process, and he was deliberate. You know, it's like, hey, that position's open. If you don't bring Joe into that role, you're crazy. Like, that's a relationship you build with that's the most important relationship you have, is with your direct supervisor, that they understand, can support, and can lead you through those things, and that you are working in constant communication with them on that. But yeah, we all need a friend and a mentor like that for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah. So we kind of heard you say, recap for those, that are joining us here, is that really you need to be prepared to be things to be more critical, right? Understand, thinking about, individual contributor, the bar is here and looks good, but now you want leadership, you got to be this good, right? Second thing is already be the guy people are going to, right? And if you're already, who's already without title leading, those are the people. And I know as a leader, those are the people I look for as well. And then finally is make sure your direct report, you're hiring, the one that you're working for, your manager, they gotta be your champion. They gotta prepare you. And when that opportunity emerges, they need to say, I got your guy. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that ongoing dialogue has got to be there. You have to have support, but I mean, that growth mindset, and as leaders, we love people that are constantly investing in themselves. Like, we obviously, leaders have to do that, but everyone should be doing that. So that's just it's an infectious attitude to have within your organization, and we want those people to succeed, and we need those people to succeed. So having that outward persona of like, no matter what comes, I will solve it. No matter what challenge there is, you think like a leader, you think like a business owner. And that's something we pick up on pretty quickly.
Awesome. Last question for you. And this one's kind of a fun one here, Joe. Your favorite superhero?
Well, I don't know, man. I mean, I am Joe Steele. Superman was the Man of Steel. That seems like a softball.
Hey, I mean, you can't get him more. I mean, come on. You are the Man of Steel. Already.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like the easy one. But I mean, being very, my mom and dad were absolute superheroes without capes. And I am forever grateful for everything that they've done for me and my family. They talk about two people who showed up every single day in every single way. And that's just what the world needs more of, man. I mean, like, everyday superheroes. So my mom and dad are definitely my superheroes.
Nice. I guess then the Man of Steel is actually your dad.
In my house, it's my mom, but yes, he's more like Superboy. My mom is Superman. So
okay, gotcha. I get that. Cool. Well, hey guys, I want to, if you haven't already had some questions you haven't gotten answered, you want to get some interaction, post below. I want to pull up a few questions here to see what we got from the team here. So we've got a few comments. Here's one from Danny. How does someone know if and when they're ready to step into leadership?
You never know. I mean, inside that you want things, right? But I mean, you don't know, and it's okay to like feel that out. I mean, but finding those opportunities to mentor others, to do the role while you're doing your current role. Right. I think that's where some of the large strategics have it. It's like I was in sales training, right? I mean, I was a sales training manager. I managed and trained others. And you start to go, I really like this, right? And this is something I want to do more of. So I think you'll know internally that you want more, but wanting more is just a part of it. And then it's like, hey, this is what I'm going to be doing every day. Is this what I want to do? Right. If you're a police officer, you don't hang off the, end of the helicopter every day. That isn't what they do. They fill out a lot of paperwork and they solve crimes. It's very much different. And, the best reps always make more than the average manager. But there are people that know inside that they want to contribute more, have the ability to contribute more, and have balance in their life that they can do that. So I think if you answer yes to those questions, you should take the step.
Yeah. And I agree with you. You're never going to feel ready. If you're waiting for that moment, you're going to, you always got to leap into that dark, deep part of the water, right? So, Yannick's got a question for you. Do you think it's an easy transition coming from leadership in a different industry and then moving to med device?
I mean, it's a great question. I mean, I think leadership skills, many of them are universal, and the wheel that you'll find in leadership will look much the same as it in high tech, as med tech, as manufacturing and healthcare and service. That leadership is the same, but many times, you'll be asked to take a lateral step, take a step back, to come into MedTech or any other uber successful organization. And you should be willing and wanting and able to do that. Many of the organizations want to see, do you have what it takes to make it in MedTech? It's differentiated. So they'll ask you to take a sidestep. And every time I've taken, a sidestep or a step back, I've accelerated my career. So if the question is, should I do that? I mean, it's very dependent upon where you're going, why you're going, who you're going. But I would never be afraid looking at just like an investment portfolio over a long enough time period, those are always probably good moves.
Yeah, great. One last question here, and then we'll cut it off. If anyone else has any other questions, please make sure you put it in there. Got, I don't know if it's working here. Ashley Connolly, how do you describe a high performer, and what do you look for in the intangibles when you're hiring that new talent? So some of those you talked about a little bit before, but I guess, how do you describe that high performer?
Yeah, everybody knows what a high performer looks like when they are a high performer, right? Like we recognize the greats in any, we recognize the greats in any industry, but I think there's common things that link all of those with the potential to be high performers in any industry. And, a lot of it is that growth mindset. It's that intellectual curiosity. It's never being content with the status quo within yourself. It is always striving to be the best version of yourself and bringing that to work on a very consistent basis. But the intangibles, that are hard to assess it's really hard to assess grit. I can tell you this, when we look at, folks with prior military experience, it's really hard for me to say they don't have grit. Are you kidding me? Anyone that's come from active service, you say to yourself, yeah, you've led a platoon. I will never ask you to do anything that hard here. And if you've done that, so I think those are the easy things. The intangibles are the will to do the job at hand, and the perseverance to get through those tough things. When we don't have people that are coming from backgrounds where they've demonstrated that, then we need to evaluate ways to do that. And that's a little tough in the process, but yeah, solid as well.
Good. Well, great. I really appreciate, again, you taking the time and providing all your years of knowledge and leadership and experience, and also the knowledge you gained from leaders above you, right? So thank you so much for being part of this event. Thank you, everyone, watching. Hopefully you've gained something. If you do have additional questions for Joe or myself, or we can help in any way, please tag us below or get a hold of us a different way. I appreciate it, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Joe.